Okay, we're live with Chuck Peoples from Appalachian, however that's pronounced, Medical Solutions.
Depends on
And I
where you're
thought
at in the
tonight,
country.
yeah, man. I thought tonight we would discuss some stuff regarding, medical preparedness. So Chuck's somebody who can probably give us a lot of insight into that. So, first, Chuck, why don't you just kind of tell us what you're all about and what your backstory is, and anything you want to add.
Sure. I've been a paramedic for 27, going on 28 years. Worked in various roles in EMS, from your traditional municipal EMS, working on an ambulance, worked my way up the ranks. Until the last several years, I've worked kind of in the contract area. I've worked around the world for defense contractors and other agencies. Also doing disaster relief work. Worked in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria wiped out the island down there. I was down there for a year and a half. I was the chief medic for the recovery effort there. And, just my own personal stuff. I've kind of, I guess your typical, whatever you call it these days, whatever the PC correct term is, prepper, whatever. When I started, they were called survivalists. So, I've just got a real big preparedness mindset, and I've started my own business, kind of doing teaching and training for, on the medical aspect of being prepared for people who want to be better prepared for any situation.
Sure. So how long you been in emergency services? You said
27, going on 28 years.
Right. Are you still practicing paramedic, or?
Yeah, I'm a critical care paramedic, still card holder, licensed. That's still doing all that. I currently work for a company. I'm operations manager that we provide concierge medical services for construction industry and stuff. The wind and solar industry and large commercial construction. Do that. Plus, I do some consultation work and training and things like that.
Wow. Yeah. You got a pretty varied background, but deep into the medical field, man. That's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah. I know medical. That's the one thing I know. I don't know if I could switch gears right now and do something new. I'm 52 years old. So that's what I've done, pretty much my whole adult life.
Yeah. Did you do time on the box?
Yeah. I worked 20 years in a municipal agency where I worked my way up through the ranks and stuff. But yeah, spent many years on the box, and
right.
And also flew a little bit part-time on a helicopter and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, right on, man. That's cool. So like from the standpoint of preparedness, if somebody was just starting out, right? They just all of a sudden their eyes opened up and they're like, man, I got to get some stuff, or whatever. What would you recommend they do, just from the standpoint of first steps, from a medical standpoint?
First step is training. Obviously, a lot of people do the first aid CPR, and that's important, but it's really, you're barely even brushing off, knocking the dust off the surface with that. I would immediately go to like a stop the bleed class, something that can really make a difference. And then look for good vetted medical training classes that you can get to. I provide them with my company, but there's several companies around the country that do that. But I would get as much training as you can. A lot of people make the mistake, oh, let me go out and buy all the cool medical stuff. And, I've got the cool guy IFAC and the tourniquets and all that, but their tourniquets are still in the wrapper. They don't know how to use the stuff, and that can actually be more dangerous not knowing how to use it than it can. If you've got the equipment, you've got to know how to use it. It's like anything else,
right?
You've got to have the proper training.
Yeah, that's so critical, man. Like, I constantly think about that stuff, and you really have to, because even if you're not going hands-on with regard to your training, you need to be wargaming it in your head.
Yeah.
You need to be thinking about, hey, if I come across this person and they're in this condition, what are my steps? And it's basically, to me, it seems as though that's almost like dry fire with your pistol, with your mind.
It is. It is.
It's just that repetition of like, so you're not caught off guard, because you can easily come across stuff just as a civilian. And then what do you do,
Well, you're more likely, I mean, just for the people who, who do the everyday carry, they believe in being armed, protect themselves, which they have every right to, and I do, and everyone should, in my opinion. But you should have medical too, because you're more likely to need or have to provide medical aid than you'll ever have to use a firearm, or ever have to use in a self-defense situation.
Right.
And just because you have some stuff in your car or you carry it in your bag or something like that, like a pressure dressing or even just gauze and 4x4s, there's a technique for that. There's a technique on how to dress a wound, how to actually wrap gauze, wrap a pressure dressing so it works. It's not just self-explanatory, and it's little things like that that can make a difference and get that proper training. And then just like anything else, practice with it. Can you put a tourniquet on in 30 seconds? I don't have my tourniquet right here, but I carry one every day. I practice what I preach. If you find me out and I've left the house, there's a tourniquet on my body at the minimum, medical wise. That's the way I've always been. But you have to practice those things. You have to use it. You have to have the equipment. And I'll be honest with you. This you may have some people where the medical profession, the stuff that you do, it's not rocket science. It really isn't. I can teach a monkey how to do most of the stuff I know how to do. Honestly,
Right.
It's knowing when to do it and how to apply it and what steps you take to apply that knowledge.
Right. Right. Now, so now that person's gotten the training and they've done a little bit of training on their own in the house, what are they going to need to start doing to up their game? Are they going to start stacking gauze or?
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at if you cannot get to, let's say traditional medical care breaks down, you don't have the traditional hospital care or traditional doctor cares, and you've got to take care of yourself or a family member. If you've got just a laceration, that you're not going to close up, say with sutures or something like that, something you're going to have to clean and pack a wound at least once a day. People don't realize how much gauze you will go through, because you're talking, you may just doing it once a day. You're probably going to use 4 or 5 4x4s to clean that. You're going to use sterile water or saline to flush it out and clean it. You're going to have to dry it, and then you have to wrap it with gauze. It's a lot. You're going to use it. You're going to use over a case of gauze in a month's time, taking care of that wound while it heals.
Yeah. That's super important. Is that consideration for aftercare, right?
It's important to stop the bleed, but what do you do after that? You got to take care of that wound, and you've got to do the proper steps. And that starts stepping up your game in training. That becomes more advanced. That's like going to, you go to tactical response and you take your basic pistol class. But then it's taking the more advanced classes and things like that, and it's the same thing with the medical training.
Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, you've got to step things up. You've got to have the equipment, and as you advance and have more advanced equipment, obviously you have to have the more advanced training. And there's not a lot of places that provide that. There are places that you can do the tactical medical training, where you can use your IFAC of stopping the bleed and pressure dressings and putting chest seals on and nasopharyngeal airways and things like that, which is great and it's important. But what are you going to do 2 weeks into that, for that laceration, that gunshot wound? How are you going to take care of the infection that's going to set in? Do you have the equipment to do that? Do you have the knowledge to do that? Do you know what antibiotics to use? Where do you get the antibiotics? What little pieces of equipment do you need besides the chest seal? How do I fix that wound that needs a chest seal? Can it be fixed? How do I sew up that laceration, or how do I close it? What other steps do I have if I don't know how to suture? There's so much to it, and I teach that. Now, I can't certify you into close a wound, but I can do it for demonstration purposes only.
Right.
But I can't certify you to where you go out and you say, "Oh, well, Chuck People certified me on how to, how to do sutures." No, you can't. Obviously, train true professional medical people, but can I teach you how to do sutures? Yeah.
Yeah.
What you do in your own home, that's your own business. That's
Yeah.
the way I look at it.
I think it's important to have those sort of skills potentially, so that if it is an austere environment,
Yeah.
and you're not able to get the care that most people are accustomed to, then all bets are off. You're not going to worry about certifications. You're going to need to stop the bleed. You're going to need to do these things.
And stop the bleed and stuff like that. That's under Good Samaritan now. So it's just like if you stopped and provided CPR to a stranger who collapsed. As long as you do it properly and you do it with good intent, Good Samaritan law is going to protect you. It's going to do the same thing if you apply a tourniquet on somebody or if you use direct pressure to stop bleeding. But you need to know about those other things. How are you going to do that? How are you going to close that wound? If you can't close the wound, when do you leave it open to where you treat that wound, where you clean it and debride it and manage it for the next month?
Right.
And there's also how often do you need those skills to take care of your animals on your homestead? There's cross training with it, because that's going to become what do you get when your pig has a laceration or something like that? You know what I mean?
Sure.
A lot of this is dual purpose is what I call it. It's I call it homestead medicine. Not only are you taking care of yourself and the people you love, but you're taking care of your animals that provide for you and the people you love.
Yeah. So now do you teach that in your classes?
I teach the more advanced medical care. I also teach a little bit of animal medicine. I'm not a veterinarian or anything, but I have had advanced training in canine care, and a lot of that transfers over to other animals, obviously, the general purpose. But a lot of the same things that you do, and again, I'm not a veterinarian, I'm not knocking veterinarians, are far more, of an expertise on animal care than I am, but a lot of it's the same type of technique.
Sure.
Obviously, some things are different. Medicines are different and things like that. Obviously, anatomy is, but there's some things that cross over and that you could apply to that when you don't have the veterinarian available. But let's be honest, even in today's world, Porterhouse, how long does it take you to get an ambulance to your house?
In best case scenario, you're probably talking about 7 to 10 minutes.
That's pretty good. So
Yeah.
that's good. But there's a lot of people who live in an area where they may have a volunteer ambulance service. So they don't have a dedicated on duty. So they're waiting on volunteers to come out, and those volunteers may not come. They may have to wait for the next town over, to where it may take 20, 30, 40 minutes for an ambulance to get there. That's a long time. That goes a little bit beyond. Now you're starting to get into that realm of prolonged care. You're getting past that golden hour of trauma. So what do you do? And having that more advanced care. And what if we get into a situation of a grid down scenario, or whatever the case is, natural disasters where you don't have the regular help, or you may be on your own for a few days? How do you take care of somebody who's sick? And I also provide the knowledge of, it's not just trauma. That's probably not what's going to get you. It's not going to be some big laceration. It's going to be a little cut you're going to have on your hand from fixing barbed wire or something at your hand, and then that cut gets infected, So now what do you do? How do you treat that? Or it's going to be things like in a grid down scenario, we're going to start seeing things very prevalent like dysentery. Sanitation becomes very important. Food sanitation becomes very important. All these things are stuff that is vitally important that you need to know. And those are the things that I bring with the series of classes that I do, that I teach privately.
Right. Yeah, that's good, man. It's good to know that exists. And I know that Jack Spirko on his show, he's had old Doc Bones and Nurse Amy. They've come on, and I wanted to mention them because they've got a pretty extensive collection of reference material that they've put together, regarding that type of stuff, treating people in an austere environment, survival medicine type stuff. And
their stuff is good. I've read it. I use one of their books as a reference book because it's good. It's a good reference book, but there's many other books that I keep. And that's just another thing is, as a homesteader, one of the most important things besides the equipment, get those reference books for you, Unless you're practicing medicine. I've done it 28 years. I'm far from an expert in anything. That it's called practicing medicine for a reason,
Right.
and get all those reference books that you can. And I provide a list within my classes of ones that I've used over the years that are particular for austere medicine, but they're also easy for the layperson to digest. If you don't
Right.
have medical training, some of it, when you start reading it, it's like Greek. You think you're reading Chinese. This is something that's very easy to digest that most people can understand,
Yeah.
and read and be able to apply that knowledge.
You think you can send me some of the links to some of those
Sure,
reference
sure,
materials, and
sure.
then I can include those in the text for this
Yeah,
broadcast, because I think people would benefit from that if they have any interest in that sort of thing, because I think it's really valuable that people at least know that that's an option for them, because
yeah, yeah.
most people aren't even thinking in that regard, and so coming at it from
Well,
your angle makes a lot of sense.
it's a tool. It comes down to anything else. A reference manual is going to be a tool, because what if you don't know how to take care of a particular wound? Or are you going to remember every antibiotic and what it's applied for certain illnesses, whether it's a topical skin issue of a rash or something like that? Or is it a sinus infection? Is it an abdominal infection? Is it an infection from, an animal bite? There's different antibiotics with different applications that you use that work better.
Right.
And it's just a simple reference. There's just so much stuff. Unless you do medical care on a day in, day basis, it's hard to remember all that and keep that knowledge in if you're not applying it and using it every day.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it would be great if you could give me some of that, and I could pass that along or
sure.
something,
Yeah,
as far as some
absolutely.
links to some references that you use and you
Yeah.
think would be of use to other people.
Absolutely. And these are the same reference manuals that I give out in my class, that I give these same links. When I taught at Self-Reliance Festival, down at John's place, same books that I mentioned. I actually had the books sitting out on a table to let people look at, so they'd have an idea. And then, so I think it's vitally important to build up your library. People have books on plants and gardening and seeds, all those different things. The medical references is just as important.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the point that you brought up about the training, and that's something that I always key on. Coming from my background and just the knowledge that I have regarding emergency response,
Yeah,
it's vitally important. And
sure.
I've actually had 2 times that I can recall in pretty recent years where I've had to, as a civilian, wind up doing CPR on a person. I had a person drop right in front of me at the Napa Valley Marathon. I had, just finished running that race,
Right.
and I was hanging out at the finish line, and some dude comes in, and I see him coming in, and he's stumbling, and then he just hits the ground, and I'm like, I just was reactionary. I mean, I knew exactly what to do. Now, the fortunate thing for that gentleman is that there was medics at the finish line, so within 3 minutes they were there, but I was already doing chest compressions on this dude. And it turns out that's one of a very few that I've ever been involved in a save. But that dude, when he was on the gurney, he's there with his, bag valve mask on, and he's looking over and giving the thumbs up, and people are clapping. And I was just blown away. Cause I mean, the dude was in VFib.
VFib, yeah.
They put the monitor on him. He was in VFib, and then they paddled him twice and brought him out. So it was just one of those things that is pretty rare in a CPR case. But
one of the successes is number one, getting early access to that defibrillation. But the other thing is having somebody there to immediately start CPR. And the thing is actually people knowing when to start CPR and knowing when not to give CPR. I've literally pulled up on scenes before, and somebody's doing chest compressions, and the patient is literally grabbing hold of their arms, yelling at them, "Stop! You're hurting me!" And they're going, "No, you need CPR. You're dying," and they don't understand that. You could do damage. That, trust me, when you do chest compressions right, you're going to break ribs. You're going to separate the cartilage that is on your sternum, which people commonly call the breastbone, away from from the ribs. That's going to break. If you're doing effective chest compressions, that's one of the unfortunate things that happens. And people need to realize that, you're thinking, "Oh, I'm hurting this person." No, they're dead. You're not hurting them. When you're doing those chest compressions, clinically, they're dead. So you're starting that heart back up. It doesn't get any worse than that. So, if they wake up and complain about a couple of broken ribs, hey, good. They've got something to complain about,
Job well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just one of those things though. Like, let's say a person goes out and gets that medical training, like you said, and it was like within the year, even if they just go and they get their cert card and that happens in front of them, they're going to have to think about what to do. Yeah. Whereas somebody like yourself or me, who's done it for years, it's just reactionary. And so that goes to the training aspect of knowing what to do and having that repetition so that it's second nature. So training is huge, man.
I've done a lot of training and trained with a lot of law enforcement and military contractors and stuff like that. And one of the things that I always liked doing when we were doing I would just yell tourniquet right arm, and they would know to bring their tourniquet out. They would carry training tourniquets on them, put on their tourniquet and apply it. And I'm timing it, and everybody should be able to do it in 30 seconds. And it's just out of nowhere. And within my own classes, I like to apply what's called stress-induced training. I like to override and overwhelm your senses in that training to where it just seems like it's the most horrible thing, where somebody's yelling at you. There's loud music. There's a strobe machine. There's fog. There's all this crazy stuff going that's hitting every one of your senses, that if you can apply those skills and do it properly, it's actually going to seem a lot easier when the real thing happens. Because guess what happens when the real thing's going on? Your adrenaline's up. There's the scene is a chaos. People are upset. Somebody's hurt. Something bad has happened. So if you can concentrate and get the job done and do it in an efficient, quick manner, you're only helping the patient. But if you train that way, when the real time comes, you're able to do it and not think twice about it. It's muscle memory, just like anything else, just like drawing a weapon, just like doing whatever the case is. The more you train, the more it becomes muscle memory.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's vital that people get that training, first of all, like you said, because they're going to be the first responder at their loved one's side. And, you'd be in a terrible position if you were there and, something was happening and you couldn't affect change in a very meaningful way. My wife actually wound up doing a Heimlich maneuver on, I think it was her nephew, and the mom froze. The mom was like, she locked up. She didn't know what to do. And my wife, she has the medical training as well. And she reached around behind and did the Heimlich on him and popped out whatever foreign obstruction was in there. And so those are very simple things. But like I say, it's vital that everybody gets trained on that, because you are going to be the first responder for your loved one.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is you become your own first responder. And do you want to be able to sit there? And I've seen it many a times throughout my career. People, if they'd had the proper training, the few minutes it took us to get to the scene, if they had just had a little bit of training and a little bit of equipment, the change that they could have made in the outcome of a patient from breathing today to now being dead. And they see that because they lock up, they freeze, because they just don't know any better. They don't have that training. And it's up to you as an individual whether you choose to do that or not. But to me, it's only prudent and smart that you do so, at least if for only thing, your own family to take care of.
Sure. So let me switch gears on you, and get your take on, obtaining alternative medications, as far as from the standpoint of going outside of the prescription route. What's your take on that? And
same stuff. Your fish may get sick a lot, so you may have to get fish antibiotics to help your fish who get sick a lot. Well, sometimes some fish are much, much bigger. They may actually be the same size as you and me. Sometimes that fish stuff is a smaller dosage, so you may have to do some math, to get it up to the proper dosage. But it's the same stuff made in the same laboratories, just like pet medicine. You can go right now to a Tractor Supply and get penicillin and buy it. It's in the liquid form, but if you know how to give an injection and you know what the proper dosages are to give, It's no different. As
Right.
long as that person's not allergic to penicillin, and you know that the contraindications of giving a medication and getting that training, you can get it. I think there's nothing wrong with it. And my thing is, get it wherever you can.
Right.
Jace Medical, and then there's another company that's doing it where you can do a phone consultation with a physician, and they'll prescribe you antibiotics to have. Yep, you got to pay $250 or whatever it is to get it,
Right.
but you can. But here's the other thing. Some countries that you may travel to that may border this country, you can buy medications that require prescription in the United States that are over the counter,
Right.
there that you can buy just like you can Tylenol and things here. There's ways to obtain things. I think
Right.
it's very important and prudent that you stack your medications, get your
Right.
antibiotics at a minimum, get all those different things that you have. So if there ever is a time, because I'm 52 years old, it's the first time in my life I ever saw food shortages. My father, who recently just passed away, and my mom, who's still alive, they were both 75. I asked them. They never saw food shortages. This past couple years, we've seen food shortages. Now, what's the real reason for that? We can debate that all night long. That's a whole nother show. But you're going to see medication shortages, and there are medication shortages right now. Every year, there are shortages of certain medications. And now that we don't have the trade relations that we've had with China before and the supply chain issue, a lot of the ingredients that go into our medications that are made here in the USA, they may be manufactured. Those ingredients come from China.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a little troubling. I would just say for myself, there's things that I could do to shore up our gaps, and I think probably a lot of people could say the same thing, but we have been working on trying to get the things that we need to have in reserve, because of the fact that if something happens, let's just say there's maybe some kind of something that happens that causes people to panic. And then they go in and they start taking stuff off the shelves at Walmart. You don't necessarily want to be the person who's like, oh, I need to go get some stuff because I don't have no stuff, right? You want to make sure that it's like, I already got my stuff. I don't need to get into that chaos. And so, that's one of the things that we've been doing is stacking, like over-the-counter type medications of things, allergic react, all kinds of different things. Analgesics.
Those are just as important.
Yeah.
I mean, the same Benadryl that I used on an ambulance may have been in an IV or a liquid form, but it's the same thing and the same dosage that you can buy at Walmart or wherever.
Yeah.
That's 25 milligrams a pill.
Love that diphenhydramine.
Yeah, that's Benadryl. I mean, so, get the Benadryl, get all those things, because you know what? You're still going to have allergy problems. You're still going to have the sniffles. You're still going to get headaches. You're going to have aches and pains. Grid down, grid knock down, no matter what the situation is, you're going to need all those things. So stock up on it. But if you can get the other medications, do so, because you're going to need those too. And you're more likely to need those than you are. And I'm not saying don't stock up on bullets. Don't stock up on the weapons training and stuff. I believe in that. It's training, but you're more likely to have to use the medical than you will in a self-defense scenario. And and get good equipment. The stuff you carry it in, get good equipment. Don't cheap out on that either, because guess what? It'll fall apart when you least want it to.
Yeah.
I had another manufacturer's bag that I had in Puerto Rico. We were doing what's called short haul operations, where we're hooked to a cable below a helicopter, 75 feet. Helicopter lifts up, flies to an area, puts it down. Well, we rig up our bags on that in between us. I rigged up a bag. It's a well-known tactical clothing and gear company. Had one of their medical bags, backpack. I had it hooked in this big, and it looked like it was a reinforced thing. We're about 500 feet in the air, and that strap that the carabiner was through rips away from the bag, and I watch it sail down 500-600 feet and explode in the forest below, in the jungle area that we were in Puerto Rico. And there went all, $2,500, $3,000 worth of equipment, because the bag didn't hold up. So buy the stuff. I mean, I switched most of my medical bags over to special operations equipment stuff for one reason. John's stuff's legit. You know, John Willis makes bomb-proof gear. I've used everybody's. Believe me when I say I've used everybody's around the world. There's none better made than John. We've talked about certain medical stuff, and you know, he's consulted with people in the world, and there's a reason special operations units use his equipment. It's well made, and so again, it's just like anything else. Don't skimp on the equipment. Don't skimp on the stuff that holds your equipment, because that's just as important, protecting your equipment and having a reliable container for it and way to transport it, you know, as is having that stuff. Yeah. Does it cost money? Just like everything else we do with homesteading and prepping and everything else, you know, there's a dollar sign behind it somewhere, but you know, make it a priority. I think medical is an absolute one of the most important priorities you have to have with food and protection and sustainability, period. Because it is part of sustainability.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it's one of those things that, you know, doesn't generally get used often, and it's not as, you know, it takes a backseat to food and water, obviously, but it is very important to have, because when you need it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things. It really could mean life or death. You know, that you have the equipment and you're prepared for it, because it doesn't do you any good sitting at home. When somebody has an arterial bleed, you've got 3 minutes to take care of it. Can you run back to your car, grab a tourniquet, take it out of the package, run all the way back to the patient and put that on in 3 minutes? No, but you know what I can do? I can reach in my pocket, take one that's already properly staged out of the package and apply it in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
With the proper training, anybody can. Yeah. That's why I carry medical on me, things that can make a difference, stuff that I can immediately take care of that can kill somebody in 2 to 3 minutes. A sucking chest wound, an arterial bleed, things like that. I have that stuff on me that I can, mitigate those emergencies immediately and save somebody's life. That's why I carry it on my body.
Yeah. Well, you're more well equipped than probably 99.999% of like the population. Seriously. I mean, that's an amazing thing to have on you. Most people don't carry a tourniquet. Even people that carry guns don't, typically carry tourniquet.
And they don't. And it's silly, because I'll be honest with you. I've carried a tourniquet on my body for years and years. I mean, literally every day. When I go out, if I've got a pair of shorts on, yep, I wear the cargo shorts. You want to know why? Because I carry a bunch of shit in my pockets, and some of that shit
big pockets.
Is a tourniquet. I always have a tourniquet on me, always. Yeah. And I always, if you go in my vehicle right now, I've got 3 different medical kits. Every single one of them have at least 2 tourniquets in it. Yeah. Even though I have one on my body, my medical kits have that, Right. I think it's vitally important. Have I used a tourniquet on real patients? Many a times, unfortunately. Yeah, I have, through my career and through my job. But, you need it. I've seen it where you need it. If I hadn't applied that tourniquet within 2 minutes, those people, they'd be dead. Right. No question about it. They would have bled out. And bleeding out, sanguination, is a very preventable injury. It's something you can stop and prevent somebody from bleeding to death, depending on if it's an extremity wound. Now,
what's
if
up,
it's on
Chase?
the inside, unless you're a surgeon and you're in the surgery suite, obviously you can't. But if it's an extremity femoral bleed or an arterial extremity bleed, you can prevent that death, and should. Yeah. You should be prepared for that.
Yeah, no, you've got a good point there. It's just one of those things that, like, people, they have to make that determination for themselves. Like how much stuff do they want to carry? Because that's a high risk, low frequency event.
Yeah.
Right. The chances of that happening to the average dude who's like driving his Tesla back and forth to work and gets in a business suit and goes to the office, he's not going to carry a tourniquet. But if you're a guy who's like running a chainsaw here, and you're a logger out in the forest, probably be a good idea if you carried a tourniquet. At least
you'd be surprised how many times I've used a tourniquet on chainsaw injuries, or seen one used on just chainsaw injuries alone.
Right.
Most of the tourniquets that I've applied as far as in the civilian world, not when I was working overseas or anything like that, but in the civilian world was from accidents, chainsaw accidents, home accidents, workplace accidents, things like that. It wasn't because of a gunshot wound or, anything like that. Have I placed those in the civilian world? Yeah. I saw those more when I worked overseas, but most of the tourniquets I did was because there was one guy who was drunk on the phone with his girlfriend, got mad while he's talking to her, kicked a full-length mirror. The mirror comes down, it breaks, comes down, slices the artery and one of the arteries in his ankle, and we get there, and it looks like a fountain every time his heart's beating, blood's spurting out, and I apply a tourniquet to save him. That he was almost dead by the time we got there, and literally it was like a minute and a half response time. We were there fairly quickly. He was close to us. Chainsaw injuries, car wrecks, just different things. Guys putting up plate glass windows, window installers. I've seen where those have broken and cut. It's things like that happen every day that you might be walking by. You may never use that tourniquet. But guess what? Do you carry a self-defense weapon every day? How often have you used that? You still carry it just in case, right? I use my pocket knife and my flashlight, my everyday carry flashlight, every day. That's why I carry it. But I carry that tourniquet because I may never use it just walking around in my everyday life. My work, yes, but I may never have come across that. But I may never have to come across to use my weapon either.
Right.
But I'm still prepared and still have it. It's
and again, that just goes to the placing the priorities for an individual where they want to place those priorities. Do they want to carry a tourniquet or they want to carry a gun or do they want to carry both? Some people want to carry a bunch of other stuff as well. I mean, I got enough stuff weighing my pants down. So
if I've got a weapon on me, I have a tourniquet on me, regardless.
It's a good idea.
It goes hand in hand. But even if I am in a place where I don't have a weapon on me, I still have a tourniquet on. Now, granted, that's just my nature, but I find that priority is that important. That there's because how quickly you need it, how quickly in 3 minutes you can bleed to death, literally. You're an irreversible shock. You've bled out. Your body no longer has the capacity that your pipes have busted. Everything's leaked out. You no longer have your tank's no longer full. It's emptied out. You're dead. That's simple.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a good cause for carrying a tourniquet for the person who's bleeding out like that. But hey, so tell me this: you're in West Virginia, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So what's it like there in West Virginia, man? How's the climate as far as
we actually get pretty much all 4 seasons, like right now it's mild winter. I mean, we've had some nights that it's already gotten down into the 20s and teens. Here lately, the last week, it's been kind of unseasonably warm for this time of December, in the 50s, but we've had a lot of rain. It's warm today, the same stuff. So yeah, I mean, we see all 4 seasons. We have a true fall, spring, summer, winter here.
Yeah. West Virginia is one of those states, for me at least, that I don't hear about a lot, and I think that's probably a good thing because you guys are kind of low profile.
Well, I mean, we actually wear shoes here. We don't all wear bib overalls and live in the woods, and we're all not coal miners or anything.
Nothing wrong with any of those things.
Exactly.
Nothing wrong with that.
It's a good state. There's great people here. There's a lot of like-minded people in the community that we frequent with in West Virginia. And there's a lot of people moving to West Virginia to have that type of lifestyle, to have the land, to have that, because there's beautiful property here and you can grow good growing seasons, great place to have animals and raise, whether it's cattle or pigs, sheep, goats, whatever your flavor is, your fancy is, you can have all that. And there's a lot of people who want to live that homestead life here, and it's becoming much more popular. But don't move to West Virginia. Go over there in Kentucky with Jason. We don't want you all here. That's what I like to say is you just leave us alone. you could go other places, you know. But I mean, it's a very welcoming state, a lot of land, and I enjoy it. I've traveled literally all over the world, and I really consider this one of the finest places to be able to live and raise a family.
Yeah, no, it's like I say, it's not really been up on my radar, but I think that's probably a good thing. It's kind of just one of those states that people mind their business and go on about life, and it's probably a really nice place to live, like you said.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have, West Virginia has its problems like every state. There's pros and there's cons. It's just like anything else. But you know, you can make a decent living, and you can have a good, if you're wanting the more simpler life of homesteading and stuff like that. It's a good place to do it.
Right. Yeah, that's nice, man. So Self-Reliance Festival, that was my first time out there, and it was a good experience, and I got a chance to meet you out there.
Right.
And your son Chase. That was it was cool running into you guys and getting to chop it up a little bit. And so yeah, I appreciated meeting you guys and establishing that relationship. How many times have you been to Self-Reliance?
3 times. I've taught at 2 of them. I was supposed to teach at the one last June, but I got COVID. So I didn't want to infect everybody, but I taught at this last one, the one in February and June. I've taught some medical classes, but it's because of Self-Reliance that I've met so many different people in this community and have been exposed to obviously people like you and your channel, Toolman Tim, Nicole Sauce. I was aware of Jack Spirko before that, but more became more of an interest and more of a priority to watching him. Jason, with Kentucky Sustainable Living, things like that, who you've had on and stuff. Just all these different people that I've been exposed to and met and become friends with. And it's really because of John. Yeah. John he's part of this catalyst of bringing all these people together. Him and Nicole and the people with Jack. And it's amazing all the different people that come through it. And I've literally got people from Tim and Ed from the Iridium group up in Canada, the snowbirds up there, to people, Texas, California, literally all over the country. And then I've also been exposed. That's one reason I really wanted to teach the type of things and training that I'm doing is more geared for the people who want to be prepared, more like-minded like us. And I'm getting calls because of that from all over the country. People wanted me to come and do training and stuff, which I love and I want to do. Right.
What about what's your take on the basically the kind of like primary care physicians where you can essentially kind of pay for a membership and have direct access to those doctors? I mean, it's a good way. Is it a money-making scheme for the doctors? Yes. Am I saying that some of those doctors don't have very good intent? Yeah. I don't think it's a bad idea, because if you look at it now, people don't realize we're in a healthcare crisis right now. Mm-hmm. There's a huge shortage of nurses. There's an even bigger shortage of paramedics. You're going to see longer response times for ambulances. You're going to see longer response times even for helicopters getting there, because there's not as many available. There's not as many people going in because of the pay is not high enough, and it's too taxing. It's overwhelming right now for regular emergency services. So people are going, I don't want to do this career anymore. It's burning me out. So you're going to have to wait longer. And then now look at it. What happens when you go to an emergency room these days? They're always full. You're waiting hours upon hours upon hours. So I think it's kind of a unique thing that if you value it being able to have quick access to a doctor, you'll pay for it. It's like anything else. How valuable is it to you? How important is it to you? Right. Yeah, there was an episode on Jack's show on the Survival Podcast for those that don't know who Jack is, but right. He's the granddaddy of this. He's the one kind of sort of. Yeah. It's a big ecosystem that kind of falls under his umbrella, but he's been putting out content for so long with regard to preparedness and homesteading and raising chickens and right. all of this stuff. I mean, you can literally go onto his website and type in the search bar anything you want to know about anything.
And he's done something on it.
Yeah. And see if it pops up. He's got like 3,500 episodes. So there's just a valuable bit of information. I see in the chat there that there's a lady, Lucy, who said she wants to know more about farming and chickens, and she didn't want to hear about medical. Well, she could actually go onto Jack's site and type in chickens, and she's going to find a plethora of information as it relates to chickens and how to raise chickens and chicken husbandry and everything. So there was an episode, and I wanted to reference it because I actually looked it up today because I was thinking about it, but it's episode 2997 on his podcast. That
I'll write that down because I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, if you look it up, he had a guy on called, I think his name was Dr. Jason Pathley or something like that. It's a kind of an interesting last name, but he basically has that kind of a service where a person can have 24/7 access to him because of the fact that you're having this membership. The membership costs anywhere from $25 to $70 a month.
Yeah.
Which in fact, that's pretty reasonable, man. That's pretty cheap to be able to pick up a phone and say, "Hey doc, I'm having this issue." And you don't have to go wait in a waiting room or deal with a bunch of BS. You can just go directly to that doctor. And he claims that he can meet like 85% of all of your medical needs going through him. So I think it's a valuable thing to at least mention so that people might have the understanding that it even exists, because that wasn't something I even knew anything about.
It may not exist in your area, but there's even services now where you can do teleconference, where you can get on just like we are now on your computer, look at a doctor face to face, and they can do an exam. I've done telemedicine for years where I've literally been overseas working, and we're conferring with a doctor in another country, or back here in the States when we're, several continents away. We're 14 hours time difference.
What's up, Jason?
And doing those things. So I think it's extremely important to do that. How valuable is it? And going back to what you mentioned in the comments, Lucy, who wants to do chickens and farming, only thing I can tell to people like that who say that's great. If you have chickens and you're doing farming, you're probably going to need medical at some point. It is important. It should be just as that priority of taking care of your chickens, because I want to take care of my chickens too. I want to have my farming, my garden, the food I raise, and I want to preserve the food I raise. But I also want to be prepared that what happens when you have an accident when you're taking care of your chickens or you're taking care of your garden and things like that. Right. It goes to priorities and taking the time and learning about all of it. And a perfect place to do something like that is watching Jack Spirko, going to Self-Reliance, going to events like that, John Willis, Nicole Sauce, all those guys and all the people that are in that, your channel has just blown me away, because for me, you make things simple, stupid. There's stuff like, I don't know where to start on this. Well, let me see what Porterhouse is doing. And then you'll have something, or you've had something. I'm like, oh, and even the composting stuff, I've watched a lot, like on Billy Bond's stuff, Permapasture Farms. Billy's another great resource on stuff, and especially that. But some of his stuff, the way your style of explaining it, he did the same thing, but for some reason, I understood yours better. I don't know. You just made it a little bit more simple to me, and I appreciate that. The people who take the time out, and I'm starting my own YouTube channel to do medically related stuff. I've been working on some videos to launch it and stuff like that. And, I think it's great that in this whole thing, we can get on and learn all these different things, like from Jack, the medical stuff, the subscription-based service, all those things, because it's going to be needed. And obviously things aren't getting any better.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think we all kind of need to work together, people who are of like mind and want to move in a particular direction. We need to find and seek each other out and try to establish and maintain relationships, because it is good. Those are some of the most important things that exist, really, is the relationships with others. So I'm pretty grateful to have been able to meet the folks that I've met, and I'm just, grateful to be able to maybe put out some content that somebody's going to even want to watch, because there's a lot of different places they can go to watch stuff,
I always try to, your channel and Jason's and John's and all the people that I really gain knowledge from their content. I make sure I always like the video, and I always try to comment to help that algorithm, because I want to see you grow. I want to see you prosper. And that's the least I can do. I can take that 5 seconds of my time to leave a comment and hit the like button. That's going to assist you, because you've taken all this time and effort to film and produce the video and put it out there. The least I can do is take 5 seconds to show appreciation. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I think, everybody who's, in trying to put out content, I think they would appreciate that as well. So, yeah, for sure. Thank you. You sounds like you're going to be putting out a YouTube channel, man. What's going to be the name of this? Is it going to be
Appalachian
Appalachian
Medical?
Medical?
Appalachian Medical Solutions. It's going to be under that. It'll be, my name, Chuck Peoples, on it. But I'm going to do some gear reviews, some tutorial videos as far as medical stuff. And it's not so much the typical medical stuff of, but there will be stuff like, how to put a pressure bandage on. But I'm going to show you the true technique of it, why neatness counts with it. I'm going to show you different types of tourniquets on how to use them, and which are better and which aren't, in my opinion, and what I've experienced by actually using them in real situations. I'm going to show you my ideas of putting together different medical kits. I'm going to review a lot of John's stuff, his medical bags and gear, and other bags that aren't maybe considered medical bags, but I've made them into one, and show you how to set things up and give you an idea of what equipment you need around the homestead or your vehicle and stuff like that to be better prepared.
Yeah, that's super
training.
That's super important. It would be a great, probably a great thing for a great resource for people to tap into. So I'd be interested to know when you start pumping content that way.
There's a lot of good people out there who do it. There's a lot of people who, just like anything on the internet, they do it wrong. They put out bad information. I just try to put out the proper information so people can get the right material and the right education on this stuff. And then hopefully I'll be able to help them and give them something that's worth their time, and watching that, and they can gain from it to help themselves or their family at some point.
Right.
There's a lot of great guys, Bear, independent, Refuge Medical Training. They do great classes. I couldn't recommend them enough. There's a lot of people who do some good medical classes, and if you don't seek me out for training, just seek training. I'll be more than happy. If you don't want to listen to me and you don't like me and say, fuck that guy, I don't like him. Let me tell you some people who you should go get training from. Because it's super important. It's very important that you do so, just like your firearms training, just like you take the swales classes and the permaculture classes and all that. I really truly believe it ranks just as important up there with it.
Yeah, I would almost say unequivocally that it's a lot higher than a swales class, but it's definitely up there for sure as far as the importance of it. And it's just one of those things that's often overlooked, man.
Yeah,
it just is.
I want to make the training easy, and I want to make it fun. It's not going to be, my training isn't death by PowerPoint. It's, you're doing hands-on. Most adults, they learn better by doing. So I'm showing you, you're learning from step one of whatever new skill it is. We're getting our hands on it and we're doing it. But you're going to do it in this real life scenario based training that we can do, so you're better prepared. And the way I look at it is, I'm going to be there until you get it. If that means I have to stay longer and we have to do it longer and more, I'm going to do so, because I want you to come out of there successful. I want to set you up for success.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question. What do you plan on doing next year as far as festivals? You're probably going to be going back to Self-Reliance.
Yeah, I mean, I'll consider anybody who wants to come and listen to me babble on for 45 minutes or an hour. I mean, I go to Self-Reliance. I don't go to Self-Reliance because I'm presenting. That's literally 1 hour of the whole weekend. I go for the classes, and more importantly, I go for the interaction with the people.
Right,
and that's all being there.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking too. I mean, do
Yeah.
you plan on going to Self-Reliance? You plan on going to any other festivals?
I'll
Just as
always go to Self-Reliance, whether I'm presenting or not. I feel it's the best one out there. I'm going to try to go to a couple of Nicole's events. Nicole Sauce from Living Free in Tennessee. And I'm looking at some of the other stuff that Tag and all those guys, some of the events that they're putting on. I'm looking at some of those. And to be honest with you, I may make my way down to Texas and try to go to one of Jack's, because he puts on get some really good people and some good classes down there.
Yeah, Jack's kind of hard. He's kind of harder to get into. He's got more of a limited, arrangement there. And it's, tickets are kind of hot off the press, so it's a little bit more difficult to go. I wouldn't mind going either, but, Self-Reliance is a great place to go. And, there's other places to check out. In fact, Tim's going to be possibly putting one on up there in old Canada land.
Yeah. I know he's talked about it, and I would definitely make my way up, into the winter wonderland, as I call it up there. And, and go to one of his. And I would love to. I mean, there's some great people even out of Canada. Tim, Ed with the Iridium Group. I don't know if you've ever looked at his stuff. He does some firearms and medical training. And super, super knowledgeable guy, especially on weapons of mass destruction and chemical weapons and things like that. Great guy. But yeah, there's a lot of things I want to go to. I want to try to get as much exposure to the different things and different classes that I can. I mean, there's a lot of the same instructors presenting at a lot of these different things, but you know what? You learn something new every time you listen to them. I could listen to a lot of these guys. You, in my opinion, why you weren't presenting at Self-Reliance is still baffling me. I learned from you and John Witherspoon so much by just talking to you guys. And I'm like, you guys need to be presenting. I don't think people realize, and that's why I tell people the wealth of knowledge that you bring and your experience is truly, it's unmatched by most people.
Well, I don't know if I'm worthy of such high praise, but
you are.
I appreciate the compliments. Nice of you to say, but yeah, cool. Let me ask you this, man. We've been jamming on for almost an hour.
Okay.
I like to ask people what is their EDC of preference, and I know you've already referenced besides tourniquet, and keys and wallet. What's your EDC that you gotta have? You use the most?
It's actually in the other room where I take my stuff out of my pockets when I come inside. I carry a Surefire flashlight every day. I carry a couple of different knives. I normally have a small fixed blade knife on my hip or a neck knife. I also carry a pocket knife and an auto opening knife that I carry every day. And I always have some sort of of course, my keys, money, and I have a small medical kit that I carry. If I had it, I should have it right in front of me to show you, but it's just a little pocket kit that has a pressure dressing. And I have, depending on what I am, I wear the ankle kit during the winter if I'm wearing pants that Special Operations puts out that I've got loaded up that I carry for medical. And if I'm not carrying that, I'll have a smaller one in a cargo pocket or a pocket pants of medical. And then I carry a weapon. I always have a pistol of a Glock variant, normally a Glock 43X with a spare mag that I carry.
What's the 43X? What is that? Is that a 9? Is that the
9? It's a single stack 9mm, smaller, small frame that I like. I mean, it's I carried a Glock 19 for years, and then switched over to the Model 45, which is basically a Glock 19 and 17 shoved together. It's got a 17 frame and a 19 slide on it. I carried that for a while, and then I switched to the 43X because it's a little smaller, a little less magazine capacity, but I'm okay with that, just as long as I have something to protect myself with.
Sure. Is West Virginia constitutional carry state?
Yes. Yeah. It's
constitutional carry. Nice.
Yeah, it's constitutional carry. It's open carry. It's a very gun friendly state. Obviously, it's a big 2A proponent state. A lot of hunting. And there's a lot of shooting competitions that happen on the weekends here, whether it be a 3-gun match or traditional shooting, long distance shooting. There's a lot of shooting sports that go on in West Virginia.
Yeah, no, it was actually pretty nice driving back to Self-Reliance, because all the states that I traveled through a lot of them were just constitutional carry,
Right.
And then there were some that was like, you could have your weapon, but it needs to be like, not concealed. It needs to be out in the open. A couple states like that going through, but the rest of them was just like, it's a gun. It doesn't hurt
nice
nobody.
thing is West Virginia, if you have the concealed weapons permit, which you don't need if you're a state resident, you have the constitutional carry. But if you do have the West Virginia concealed weapons permit as a residence, it's recognized in, I believe, 38 or 39 other states now, and that you can legally carry concealed in that state by having that. It's reciprocal between the states. So that's an advantage of having it. And we've got, as far as politicians go on a 2A stance, they're very pro with it here. Now they're politicians, granted, but that's something that's always been held up within the state.
Yeah. Well, one of these days I might have to get out that way. Sounds like a pretty nice place to.
You're always welcome, and I'm only about 3 hours away from Jason Sparks. With Kentucky Sustainable Living. He's just down the road, so
yeah.
I'm close to him. We're getting together here real soon, and we're going to try to work on a few things too.
Yeah, Jason's good people. It's good to know some folks. It's good to know some good people. So I'm
that's what I love.
And chat it up with you, and we'll make sure we stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, man. Like, kind of closing out the evening, if we would. What is the way that somebody can reach you if they so choose to?
I've got a website. It's Appalachian Medical Solutions.com. My website just went down today. There were some issues with my online web store. I've got the guy who's taking care of it for me. It's taken down. It should be back up tonight or tomorrow. I don't know if the store will be live, where you can order some equipment stuff, but the rest of the information will be there, and you can actually send me information about classes and stuff. And it has class descriptions, type of classes I teach, and everything, a little bit of information about myself. You can email me direct at Chuck at AppalachianMedicalSolutions.com. That's my email. And you can get a hold of me through there, and I'll be more than happy. If you've got questions, I'll try to help you out. You got questions about training, we could talk about cost of different classes that I have. I've got everything from 1 day up to 4 day long training classes. And I'll do custom classes. If you go, I really want to focus on this or this type of medical stuff or whatever, we can design something that's going to fit you and your group's needs. What's
your minimum group size? Do you have one?
I normally like to keep it at 6, but I can do smaller for certain things depending on what it is. But you also got, if I'm going to be traveling to you, there's a minimum charge. It's a minimum of 6 people is what I base it on. And then anybody over 6, it's a certain per head per fee, depending on the class. But it's greatly reduced, as far as how much it's going to cost by adding each person. So normally I throw out, if you're going to have 10 people, it's going to be this set figure, and everybody just kind of splits it up among themselves in a group. There's normally a group host that I come to, because I'll travel to you, bring the equipment. And I really don't need a whole lot as far as what I need to where I can host, the class can be hosted, because I bring the equipment, and we're going to be outside anyway, rain or shine, training. Yeah. So it's just the way to do it.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. It's great having you on, Chuck. I hope we get an opportunity to cross paths here, at some point in the future. Yeah. It was good meeting you out at Self-Reliance, and
you too.
Yeah.
So
what's out? Do you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, that's it, man. I appreciate you having me on. I'm honored to come on and speak with you, and thank you very much, man. And just keep your channel's killing it, man. I enjoy watching and look forward to all the new content you put out, and I learned so much from you. Thank you.
Right on. Well, thank you. I'm actually going to be on live with Nicole and John tomorrow morning, so that'll be
Oh
kind of
yeah,
cool.
that's right. I forgot. Yeah, you're going to be here, and then actually Ed from I think Iridium Group is going to be on next week.
Oh, right on.
So yeah. So that'll be 2 weeks worth of watching lives that you don't want to miss. You know, you're going to learn stuff from two great people. So yeah,
Right
that's
on.
great, man.
Yeah, well, thanks for the compliment. All right, brother, we're gonna let you go, and
All right.
we'll end it. And everybody in the chat, thanks for chatting on, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right. Thank you all.
All right, late.
Yeah, man.
All right.